goes there. And the camera will start recording right now, man. But as soon as we're ready, I'm gonna go ahead and let you know, and we'll go, man. I know I'm setting up.
You want me looking at you, the camera? What do you want?
You go where. I mean, we're just gonna be in conversation, so you can, definitely just back and forth. Let's see. You're almost ready.
You still training?
No, bro. I mean, dude, here, like, they're always like, dude, just come by, and the possibilities are out there. I mean, they definitely invite me here, but it's just, I don't know, man. It's just
different.
Yeah. Well, it's just a little bit of everything. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like, we all deal with stress, and we all got, like, stuff going on at home. But it's
Trust me, I get it.
Yeah. So it's just like with me, like, I'm here, and half the time I'm like, damn, I could have put a gi on and jumped on there real quick. But it's like, I don't want to be that guy that's like, hey, man, well, I gotta go, and be rude about it, because it's like if I have somebody waiting or it's just. But yeah, man, it's just I would love to, man, just to get back into it. Period. I don't want to be
When's the last time you trained?
Dude, the last time I put a gi on was probably 2008. Like, when I literally I was teaching for a while, and then after I stopped, I went and back with Mike. I hit him up. I was kind of, I ain't gonna lie, I was a little scared about it, but I was just like, hey, man, can I, and he was like, yeah, man, just come in. So I was like, cool. So I did that, and it was fun.
Is he still around?
Yeah, he's actually at a location, man, I'm not exactly 100% sure where, but he is teaching out of another location right now. And let me see, we are ready to go. Hello, everybody. sPidA here, the 5 Car Podcast, coming to you once again from San Antonio, Texas. We are in downtown San Antonio, to be exact. And of course, my guest today, man, and I'm very proud to say, man, I've got you in the studio, but Donny Blue, man, I've known you through the fight game for years, and it's one of those things. I guess it's kind of like a text message; it never ends. So when I see you guys, we kind of like, oh, whatever happened to your dog, and I'm like, dude, my dog. It's been like 10 years, bro. But man, I'm glad to have you here, man. I mean, I know
excited to be here.
And I gotta ask right off the bat, because this is something I personally don't know. But are you from San Antonio?
Yeah. I was born at Wilford Hall.
You see, and because I remember when you we were talking about back in the day, through Tama. Yeah. And when you kind of jumped in the picture, like, I didn't really know who you were, of course. I mean, it was new, but I was just like, man, where's this guy from? Like, but you were training at a gym, of course, and
Yeah, I was at back then. When I moved here, I moved in 2006, and I started training with over by the airport with Maha,
right,
and Bruno Azevedo, and then Maha brought in Rodrigo, and that's kind of where it started.
No, yeah, you see, and that's part of history a lot of people don't know, man, because it started with that location that's still there.
Yeah, Brook Hollow 281. Yeah. Old school.
Yeah. And that's like one of those where it's like, okay, where did it come from, man? But because, like, we were talking earlier, and I was, telling you about, with Mike Rangel, man, like, we had no jiu-jitsu schools here. We had no black belts. We had nothing. And yeah, when Bruno came down, I had heard of him. I had never met the guy till, like, after the fact. But, I had heard, like, he was going to bring a black belt, and I was excited. I was like, man, that's cool.
Yeah, so how it worked out for me was, obviously I was in the military. I was in Georgia, and my parents were living here, and I got a humanitarian assignment to come back here and help take care of my mom. And so, but man, I was into the MMA scene real big in Georgia. I love jiu-jitsu and no-gi grappling, so I was looking for a place to train. And back then in 2006, not a lot of places in San Antonio. So I hit up, I found Team Tabmock with James, and I hit up James and was like, hey, can I come train in your garage? He's like, absolutely. But when it came time to move, they had Bruno was in town, and James had moved Team Tabmock in with Bruno, and that's just kind of the rest was history.
Yeah. No, you see, and that's another gem, dude, because even back then, I had heard about him. I actually knew some guys that were training with him, and I still have them on Facebook. And it was one of those, like, they were always like, man, come train with us. And
for sure.
I always wanted to, but because, I was training, it seemed like full time, man, with Mike, it was just hard for me to get out of there and go out there. But yeah, man, it's the garage days, I'm sure we all had them. But,
for sure.
But you see, and I was going to say this, bro, because I remember they said you were military, so that's why I asked you where you were from. I remember when they brought you in, and they were like, hey.
I was born at Wilford Hall, but I wasn't raised in San Antonio. So I was born here. I've got San Antonio papers, but unfortunately I was raised as a Yankee. I was raised in the Pacific Northwest, but I came home, man. I came home.
No, I'm glad you're here, man. I mean, like I said earlier, you know, it's just, I know you're teaching out of a location now. What's the name of the affiliate?
RDA Fitness and MMA. It's on the far west side off of Potranco outside the Loop.
You see, and that's one of the things, because I had looked up the gym and I was like, oh man, and as soon as I saw it, I said, man, I either got to get there early or super late, because once traffic hits,
traffic is crazy out there for sure. Yeah, absolutely. If you're getting there in the afternoon on Potranco, just forget it. You should cut across 211 and get to 90. And
exactly. You see, and because I am a contract delivery driver, I've been doing this for 7 years here in the city. And I know a lot of back roads, man. I mean, I was a postal employee 15 years, man, and I mean, being a mailman too, I learned a lot of shortcuts. But yeah, I mean, once it's a certain time and they're like, hey, from this store at this time, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take Callahan all the way out till I hit whatever or one of the back roads. But yeah, man. But I mean, as far as when did it start for you? Because of course you said you moved.
Yeah. So when did jiu-jitsu start? So, man, I remember in like '92. One of my buddies, I grew up in Washington State. One of my buddies went to visit his family during the summer. When he came back, he's like, "Yo, check this out! I got this video called the UFC," and we were always messing around. And I wrestled in junior high and high school. We were always messing around, and just wrestling. And he was like, "Check this out!" And we watched the first video, and I watched Royce just choke these dudes out, and I was like, And I was a wrestler, so I thought like the wrestlers were gonna win, you know. And then I remember watching Royce choke Dan Severn out, and I was like, I'm hooked. And it was a real small town in Washington State, tiny, and so there was no place to train. And then when I finally joined the military in 2001, right after September 11th, I joined. And as soon as I got to my first duty station in Georgia, I was looking at places to train. Nice. And then the rest is history. I just started training in 2001. I started off no-gi and MMA. Wasn't gi jiu-jitsu there, so it was no-gi and MMA at a gym called Team Praxis. Cam McCarg was the instructor, and I trained there from 2001 until 2006, and then I got to San Antonio in 2006 and started training with Maha and Bruno Azevedo, and then Bruno was a dentist. He wasn't there full time, you know. Yeah, and so then Maha brought in Rodrigo. If you guys remember back in the day, at one point they were both teaching together, and then where BTT San Antonio is at now, we opened up a live MMA there before it was BTT San Antonio. Yeah. And then Rodrigo and Maha were both teaching at Brook Hall on 281 and Alive MMA, which was the 410 and Evers location. And it was closer for me to train at 410 and Evers than it was Brook Hollow because of Lackland right there. So right. I would just train there full time, and then they ended up splitting, like we know a lot of gyms do. And I was with Rodrigo from then until my brown belt, and then I started teaching in Pleasanton in 2008, and I've been teaching ever since.
You see, man, and that's a lot of history, bro. I mean, you mentioned a lot of good things, a lot of good points, because it's, when the gyms split up, and like you said, they do, man. And for me, I mean, that's growth, because now it's like, you know what, man, not everybody trains the same, not everybody has the same,
for sure,
way of teaching or just their own philosophy. So that's, it's unfortunate, but I like it, man, because it does create growth. And
I think, especially now, you look at, think about how many black belts. Back in the day in 2006, there was none really.
Oh, yeah.
And now you look at how many black belts there are. And so what I tell all prospective students that come in is, hey man, give us a shot. You get 3 free days. Go check out other schools and make sure the vibe is right for you.
Exactly.
Because some schools, the vibe just isn't right. We might not be right for you, but I guarantee there's a gym in San Antonio that is. You just got to check out the different gyms and find one that suits your vibe. No,
you see, and that's one of the things, like, having done this for years, I've met a lot of great people like yourself, man, and I'm still, I would say pretty cool with a lot of people. I don't know if anybody, has issues with me, but you know what, man, but it's just, and this is respect to everybody, because even here, we're inside a training facility here, and like you said, a lot of times, like, I have people that are like, man, I'm way out here, like, this is where I work, this is where I live, I'm looking for a gym, and I'm like, bro, like, there's 3 gyms, in your area, check them out, like, I mean, they have free classes, and I always tell them, go set up.
I always get that question a lot with my military buddies. They're like, "Hey, I'm moving to San Antonio. I want to train with you." I'm like, "Awesome, but where are you going to be living at?" Because that's gonna decide a lot on where you're going to train. Because San Antonio is the 7th largest city in the country. So like just because you're living in San Antonio doesn't mean you're going to get to train with me.
Doesn't mean you're going to run into people here in San Antonio, bro.
Yeah, I mean exactly. I mean, when's the last time we were trying to think? I think the last time I saw you was when I was training with Daniel, right? Probably at
and you see, you brought up the Bellator event.
Yeah, the Bellator event for sure. I couldn't remember if it was then I mean, we both live in the city, but we don't see each other very often.
No, yeah, you see, and that's what I was telling my past guest earlier, man. Or even before, like I'm just like, you know what, man? That's why I like these fights, these tournaments, because it's like the only time I get to see people, even locally. I'm like, bro, you're like down the street, but you know what? I mean, it's always like a little reunion, man.
I do that all the time. I'll go to a jiu-jitsu tournament. My students are like, "Man, Blue, you're always walking around." I was like, "It's like a reunion, man. I'm just seeing all the old people."
Bro. And you cannot go up to people. It's a good feeling, man.
Absolutely. But I know that one time recently I saw. I say recently, it was last year sometime. I happened to see Aaron Suarez at a tournament, and we got to. I mean, man, we fought back in 2006. I think it was like November or December, and we both live here. We haven't seen each other forever. It was awesome catching up with him.
Yeah, you see, and that's it goes to show, man, because San Antonio, especially now, man, it was big before, but now like I didn't even know it's number 7,
largest city.
Yeah, like that's mind blowing because it is getting big. I always tell people because I'm a contract delivery driver, like I deliver furniture all over the city, and I'm seeing places that I'm like, damn, there's houses back here.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, bro, they're popping up left and right, and I mean, just because you say San Antonio, now like you're in the border from here to Castroville or here to Floresville, and it's just, I mean, it's getting bigger, man. Pretty soon we're gonna be part of New Braunfels, bro. I see it
for sure. I mean, I just drove to Austin last weekend, and I mean, really, it's getting to the point where you can't even. There's not a point where you don't see city. Like being between here and Austin.
No, yeah. And I remember those days. I always tell people it used to take us like 45 minutes to get there. Now it's like 2 weeks.
Yeah, for sure.
A little road trip.
Yeah.
But man, I mean, of course, I mean, you are teaching now. I mean, you have been teaching.
I have.
You're teaching here in San Antonio.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, man, I mean, what's your motivation, bro? What keeps you going every day?
I love jiu-jitsu. I mean, I love teaching. Teaching is my passion. I was teaching in the military. I've been teaching a long time. I enjoy it. I love to see just that light bulb moment with students, where they're like, the jiu-jitsu bug bites them, and then they're in, and then they're bitten for the rest of their life. They're training, I love that idea, and then also I just love the fact that it doesn't matter if you've been training jiu-jitsu for 20 years or 2 weeks, you never stop learning. So even I mean, I got on the mats in '92, like 7th grade probably. Been wrestling since 7th grade at least. So like, I mean, obviously I wasn't doing jiu-jitsu back then, but what I'm getting at is I've been on the mats forever, and I never, like, I learn something every day. Still, like, and it, from everybody, white belts to black belts, teach me something every day, and that's what I love about it, man.
Oh yeah, and it goes back to like everybody has their own style. I mean, even when they're starting off, I mean, you kind of see how they're moving. I mean, do you kind of teach accordingly? Or?
Yeah, so I think one of the things, I mean, a lot of people say I'm arrogant, but just super confident. I think one of the things that I do really well is I can teach, like, I'm not going to teach you cookie cutter jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So like, you go to some gyms, you walk in and everybody's got the same game. I try not to have that, based on your body style, your personality, you're always going to have certain moves. Like, pretty much everybody in my schools can choke the shit out of you with a Darce choke, right? For sure. But that's not going to be all their go-to move, right? So it's based off your personality, your body type, and then who your instructor is. But I try to build their jiu-jitsu around them, and I try to have notes in my phone. As my schools have grown, like, it's harder and harder to keep notes on everybody. Yeah. but I try to keep notes in my phone and in my head on, okay, this is where they're at in their game, this is what they need to progress on. And then it helps because I have my brown belts that are there teaching as well, and even a prime example is JR Caballero.
Oh yeah, bro.
He's a monster.
Phenom, man.
He's a phenom. And he's one of my brown belts. He's only 16 years old.
Jeez.
But he doesn't teach the same style as I do at all. So our students get both of that.
Yeah,
you know.
Cool. I like that.
Yeah, so I think it's important. We have the same mentality when it comes to jiu-jitsu, obviously, but you know, there's the students can get both, you know, and I think that's super important.
No, for sure, because I mean, you brought up a memory, man. I remember when I first started with Mike Rangel, and there was this heavyset guy that was working. He was trying to teach triangle chokes, and the guy, like, he couldn't get his his leg over it, and the guy's like, oh, hey, I can't do it, and Mike's like, all right, we'll go for something else. You know, he showed him something else, but I was just like, yeah, bro, because you can't. You know, it'd be nice if I was that flexible even now, bro. Like, I'm like, hey, I wish I could put my
sure.
But yeah, I mean, it does change, and the fact that you know your students are growing on their own, you know, that's awesome.
I spend a long time talking about building your spider web, right? So like, whatever it is, you're going to gravitate as a white belt to certain moves, right? And as you progress, white belt, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, black belt, those moves will change, but you're always going to gravitate, and you'll revisit them sometimes, but you're going to gravitate to certain things. So it's like build off those. So you might just have an Americana, right, from side control, but when your opponent defends that Americana, what do you have next, right? And start to build your spider web. And whenever you get lost in jiu-jitsu, just try to get him back in your spider web. Find a position where you can get back, where you're comfortable, where you know what's going on, and get him back in your spider web and start your offensive cycle over again. Right? And that's what I try to build with all my students. You know, like I have a blue belt right now. I just gave him his blue belt. He's only been training 9 months. My fastest blue belt ever. And he's a bigger guy. You know, came to me super overweight, and now he's not. But like, he's never going to be a triangle guy, right? He's not. That's not going to be his game, right? So let's work on butterfly guard, getting back to his feet, getting on top, smashing, you know, and being able to build, like, not try to force him into some style of jiu-jitsu that's not going to be his game.
No, definitely, man. You see, because even like back then, like I always tell people, like when I first started training, I mean, of course, I was, you know, the first thing I learned how to do was tap, right? Or yell, you know, whichever one was first. For sure.
I'm loud too. I'm like, tap!
Yeah. No, yeah, you have to be, man, because it's like, dude, if not, woo. But yeah, man. I mean, when I first started, it was. I think I went like 1 day a week for a month. I was just like, man, I was going home so beat up. I was just like, I can't do it.
But back then we trained different too.
Oh yeah.
Didn't matter what gym you were at. If we were training Valley Tudo, so like you were just beating the crap out of each other.
Just getting arms, start cramping the hell out of it, man. But once I started getting comfortable, and I was just like, you know what, I had fun with it. I loved it. I was just like, man, I want you to learn everything as much as possible. And I mean, we were talking about, you know, even back then, like trying to train with traditional type gyms, whether it was boxing or judo, it was, you know, it wasn't as inviting. Maybe now, I'm not sure, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think MMA, when it first started back then, I think had a bad rep, you know, and like people felt threatened. And so like if you were known as an MMA guy, you're like, oh, you're one of those guys, you know, or even traditional Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools were like, oh, you're one of those guys, you know. So yeah, I agree. It had a little bit of a different rap than it does nowadays.
No, for sure, man. And now, I mean, of course, it's gone mainstream, and you know,
UFC's
done what they've done, and all these other promotions. But man, I gotta ask you, because that one time I did see you for Bellator. I mean, you were cornering us, a past teammate.
Yeah. So the school that I started training at in Georgia, Team Praxis. We're a really small school, but back in the day, we had a really good team, like MMA team, and a lot of those guys went on to do great things. One of my best friends, he's a 19-time UFC vet. He went on to, he moved from Georgia to Florida and got with the American Top Team, Cole Miller. And then when I was down here cornering, when you saw me, I was cornering a fighter that was fighting for Bubby Mitchell, who's a ATT black belt as well. He runs a school in Macon, Georgia, and he was here just cornering his fighter. He hit me up and was like, "Hey, Blue, I know you're in San Antonio. Can you help me corner?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." We're all super close. We talk all the time. We're just talking about doing a reunion soon. It's crazy to think that all of us back then were. I mean, funny story about Cole. When I first walked into the gym, I think he was training in hospital scrubs, like his bottoms. He didn't have gi pants on. So like, we were just going in there and just beating the crap out of each other, you know. But yeah, for sure. I was cornering a teammate. That school does really, really well for sure down there. But yeah, I think when you get into business, it's just like you probably haven't seen Mike in a long time, but if you run into Mike, it's gonna be like, you know, no time.
But probably try to pressure pass.
Yeah.
My guard, man. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I've seen him even through the fight game. I mean, he had some fighters back then, and I see him, and we talked for a bit.
Yeah.
He was real short to talk, man. So I mean, it's like people that don't know Mike. I mean, they might take it the wrong way, but he's a good guy.
Yeah,
man.
for sure.
I've always praised him for doing what he did, man. Because he definitely was a pioneer here in San Antonio, man. Now I gotta ask you, bro. Because I mean, obviously, you teach, but when you go to these tournaments, I mean, is there a difference? Like me, like I go cover an event or cover a fight. And I become a fan. Like, I'm a fan now, but it's just when I'm there, I'm kind of like, oh, man, I'm like a kid at a candy store, man. I mean, do you get that feeling as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think there was a point in time when I was teaching where I thought I would never teach kids. I didn't think, I was like, it wasn't my thing. And then a few years ago, I had the opportunity to open up my own place in Pleasanton. I was teaching at a Taekwondo place for years and years and years, and then the place right next door came available, and so I started renting that spot. We knocked down a wall and just combined the two gyms, and it gave me more time to teach so I could start offering kids classes. And then I fell in love with teaching kids, and I mean, I would say I'm probably more well known for teaching kids than I am for teaching adults, and so I spend a lot of time studying the best kids around, and I'm a huge fan. Like, I'll watch jiu-jitsu just to see what, whether it's kids or adults, just to see what's the biggest thing going on right now in jiu-jitsu. So I'm a huge fan, I mean, I think if you're going to be a coach and you're not studying and you're not a fan of jiu-jitsu, you're probably not a good coach.
No, definitely, man. Because I know, I mean, the game changes, and I mean, I'm sure you've seen that as well throughout the years. And I mean, that's one of the things that I love about the sport, because it's like, even now, like, I'll tell people, like, an armbar is an armbar, no matter where. But the transition, the setup, everything changes. So now it's like, you don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking, when I first moved to San Antonio, coming from an MMA and Nogi school, we were doing leg locks in Georgia. Then when I came to San Antonio and started training in, like, traditional Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they were like, no, like, you can't do that. And I'm like, and then you can just see the different cultures kind of, and now you look at how big leg locks are in no-gi grappling especially, and I don't teach in the gi too much anymore. I teach kids gi now that I moved back to San Antonio, but my adults, I don't have a gi program for my adults, and so you see how big leg locks are, and if you're only teaching leg locks at brown belt, you're behind the power curve.
You see, one of the things, I was able to attend a seminar with Professor Carlos Machado back in 2005, I want to say, and he knew who Mike was. I kind of, because he had asked me, and I said, hey, what? I trained under Mike Rangel. He's like, oh yeah, Mike, man, like, and he was like, and I told him, but we do gi, no gi. He's like, man, perfect. He said, that's great, because that way best of both worlds. And I was like, okay, cool, man. I was kind of hesitant to tell him because I didn't know, but he was like, yeah, man, that's how you're gonna evolve. You're gonna keep
absolutely
getting better. But he was a good guy, man, and this is a fact. I went to the seminar. It was a short seminar, unfortunately, man. I mean, I was at work at the post office. I had to beg to leave early, so when I got there, it was already started. But before it ended, he says, hey, I'm gonna roll with everybody after the class, and I was like, oh, cool, man. I was thinking, because I was supposed to get a private with him that day, and I had plans to go to Dallas and go and pursue it, man, because I wanted to teach, and I knew what I wanted to do at that time. But when I got to roll with the guy, I did like this cartwheel guard pass that didn't work. I threw everything at him. I mean, I'm here like trying to do everything right, and he's just like, oh, hooks. I just feel his freaking hooks, man. And he says, hey, this ain't capoeira. He's like, you're like a sPidA. You got 8 limbs. And that's where I got my name. I kept it. I was just like, you know what, man? Because when I used to roll with Mike or in class, like, I was all over the place, man. My thing were attacks, like transition, from the arm bar, knee bar.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what, man? I like that, man. So I started using sPidA, right? I said, why not, man? But yeah, man. I mean, it's just I've had fun throughout the years. I mean, like I said, you know, getting to meet and see how well you guys have been doing, man. I mean, it's a great thing, man. I'm proud of you, man.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
And I mean, of course, now you're in San Antonio, kinda.
I'm on the far west side for sure. It's San Antonio, I guess, but it's really I'm outside the loop on Potranco.
No, yes, sir. I had a delivery last week, and the guy's like, "Yeah, it's on the south side," and I'm like, "Okay, well, send me the address." And I look it up, and it's in Von Army, and I'm like, "Bro," I said, "Dude,
that's not the south side."
Yeah, that's like the northeast side of Von Army, bro.
Yeah.
So that's not. So yeah, that's one of those things. You know, people move to San Antonio. It's like if it's not 782, it's not San Antonio.
Yeah. That's why when I texted you this earlier, I was like, "I'm on the far west side. I'm on my way. It'll probably be an hour."
No, you see, and when you said that, I chuckled because I was just like, "Oh, okay, he gets it."
Yeah.
I was like, "Man, we're gonna be cool, man."
Yeah.
But man, I mean, of course, with the school, I mean, which way is it heading right now?
So it's man, we're packed. I mean, it's a new school, so we moved locations. The owner of the gym, Deanna Moreno, she had a gym a little bit farther out. Her and her husband did, and then they a little bit farther out towards like Helotes and what is that other town out the other direction? I'm drawing a blank. But anyways, we moved in a couple blocks, and the school's going great, man. It's packed, kids and adults. Every day there's a bunch of people on the mats. We have a good group of guys, a good solid group of kids and adults. The kids program is I started teaching the gi again. Unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of the pajamas, but I'll put them on.
Not even when you sleep, huh?
No, especially when I sleep.
I know, bro. I like that. I'm like.
I it's going great, man. I can't say enough things. I enjoy the fact, so having transitioned from being a business owner and teaching, and now I'm retired from the Air Force, and I'm actually getting paid to teach jiu-jitsu, and I don't have to mess up any business thing. I'm just getting a paycheck. Is much better.
I can imagine, bro.
Much better.
It's like having your very own sponsor, right?
Yeah, so it's just much better for me. I collect that Air Force retirement and then collect the paycheck and I really don't even feel like I'm working because I love teaching jiu-jitsu.
You see, and that's the best part. I mean, you get to enjoy it. It's like, why wouldn't you, want to do that? But
and on the weekends where I'm not coaching, I'm usually traveling, working for American Grappling Federation. I travel and work the pit usually for American Grappling Federation. So. I'm living that jiu-jitsu lifestyle, really.
Man, that's awesome, man. I mean, whenever you travel, just tag me. That way, it'll make me feel like I'm going somewhere. Like I tell people, if you go on vacation, tag me in there, man.
Sure.
I won't get a vacation this year, but I'll take what I can. But man, I mean, of course, I mean, when it comes to martial arts, man, I mean, we talked about this earlier, even before we went online. But I mean, you got to keep evolving. You got to keep your mind open. I mean, there's things that are going to change. I mean, have you learned, like in the past 5 years, whatever you learned? I mean, as far as the
so I think I've probably grown more as a black belt than I have any other rank. I think that, and if I'm being perfectly honest with you, one of the things that forced my growth is probably JR.
Oh yeah, I can imagine, especially trying to keep up with him now.
Well, he's a unicorn. I mean, realistically, that's just the God's honest truth, right? So there was a point where, for those of you guys who don't know JR, he's only been training 5 years.
Yeah. Bro,
and when his dad was one of my blue belts, and his dad was injured, couldn't train, and his dad was living in San Antonio, over on Potranco and 151 area, and his dad hit me up and was like, "Hey, Blue, like, I know you don't teach kids. I know you recommended a gym here in town, but we're just not. We've been there a week and we don't. I'm used to the way you teach. Can I bring JR too?" I was like, "Yeah." So we started bringing JR out, and at that time I had a couple kids, and JR was with me for 2 weeks as an 11-year-old, and he asked to talk to me in the office by himself. So I walked in the office with him, and I sat down and I was like, "What's up, buddy?" And he's like, "My dad says." He goes, "I want to be a world champion, coach, and my dad says you can make that happen.
Wow.
But what do I got to do?" And I was like, "Well, everybody has the will to win, JR. Everybody has the will to win. It's the will to prepare to win that sets people apart.
Right.
It's going to take sacrifice. Do you understand what that means?" And he was, he's an 11-year-old kid, just turned 11. and like a week ago. And so he's like, yes, sir. And I was like, what does it mean? He goes, doing things that sucks that nobody else wants to do. And I was like, good enough. And from that point on, everything I've ever asked of him, he's done. Like, I can't even begin to tell you. Like, I could literally tell that kid, and this is not me blowing smoke. Like, if I, as an 11-year-old kid, if I was to say, you're going to drill this until I come back. No talking, no bullshitting. Drill this until I come back. I'm going to go leave. I'll be back. If I was to do that and I would leave for 3 hours, I've never done that, but I'm telling you, this is the type of kid he is. If I would leave and come back 3 hours later, he would still be drilling. Yeah. Like that's his personality. That's what he is. He's obsessed. So it caused me, there was a point where he was 2.5 years in, he's tapping brown and black belts, right? And then you're talking about as a 13-year-old kid tapping brown and black belts. And then, so how do you close that gap between somebody that's a black belt who's been on the mats maybe 13 years or longer with somebody that's been on the mat 2.5 years? How do you close that gap? And I didn't like leg locks because I had trained him back in Georgia, and then that mentality kind of got into my head when I moved here with traditional jiu-jitsu, you know, and I didn't know them well either. And then his dad and I were talking, you know, how do we close the gap, you know, and that was one of the ways. And then so we fell down the leg lock rabbit hole, and then, you know, just studying ADCC, what are the things that are getting you wins at the highest level of no-gi grappling, right? Wrestling, right? Back attacks, right? And leg locks. And if you can't do those things, then, you know, you're not going to win at the highest level. And so that's what caused the growth of my jiu-jitsu personally, and then the way I teach as well.
No, man. I can see that, because even like you said, I mean, him being that young and already understanding, man, that's kind of people have no idea. And I think that his growth in the last 5 months is more than it's been in the last 5 years. So what if you haven't seen JR compete recently? Like, he hasn't really been on the competition scene in the last couple months. He's a different grappler than and which is scary, because if you remember, there was a big thing. I made a big stink because when he was 14 years old, he tapped those 3 black belts out in a row at AGF Nationals with 3 different submissions. He flying triangled James Partridge in the finals, and I promoted him to blue belt on the stand as a 14-year-old. And everybody across the country were hitting me up and telling me, like, you know, saying all kinds of things, you know, and that was when he was 14. He's 16 now. It's 2 years later. You can't imagine the grappler he is. Yeah. You know, it's crazy. You see, and that's one of the things, because I've seen that more and more now, and I would say it's because of instructors like yourself, man, that leave that door open to, like you said. I mean, how can you? If he's at that level and you say, "Oh no, you can't beat this guy because he's not," you know what I mean? Like, you don't do that. You invite it.
I mean, I'll straight up, like, people used to, when I would post on social media 3 years ago that I got tapped by JR, they'd think I was being humble, because they think I was lying. Dude, I was giving that kid everything I had 2.5 years ago. Now he can't roll hard with me. He can't, because he can literally drill on me. Like, whatever he wants to do, he can drill on me. He can't roll hard with me. Like, he can give me good rolls, right? But he can't roll hard. If he rolls hard with me, he'll tap me, I don't know, 70 times in 5 minutes or whatever he wants, you know. So it's just a different, and he's a unicorn. I mean, that's really what it is.
No, I mean, I mean, what can you say? I mean, the guy's, I mean, he's the young man, should I say? I mean, he's out there testing himself.
It's funny. People look at him and they're like, yeah, that kid's not 16. I used to have to carry his birth certificate. Like, I have his birth certificate in my phone because people wouldn't believe how old he is, you know? And I was never sandbagging him. I was always trying to, like, I used to lie about his age to get him to fight adults, you know? Because, like, I want, and people were like, oh, you're sandbagging. And now I gave him his brown belt as a 16-year-old, and people are like, you know, somebody on social media, when I posted the picture of me giving him his brown belt, and they're like, they must be lovers. And I'm like,
you're of the sport,
yeah, of the sport. You know, like, it's just funny, man. But the secret, there's no secret to success in jiu-jitsu. Everybody knows the blueprint. You want to be good, you have to drill. You have to have tough rolls in the gym, all right? You have to drill consistently, right? And the problem is that people won't put the work in. Yeah. Everybody knows, but people won't put the work in, you know? So he's one of the guys that will put the work in, you know? And it shows. His little brother's going to be a beast too. His little brother's 13 years old, and I mean, if you guys get a chance, go follow them on Instagram, the Exception Squad. You know, they're a Blue Jitsu affiliate. They train with me full time, but they train all day long. In the middle of the night, they're training. During the day, they're training. You know, and it shows. You know, his little brother's 13, and he puts it on all my purple belts and blue belts.
Man, you see, and that's, like you said, I mean, they got bit by that bug. I mean, obviously, because, I mean, when I first started, I mean, I did too, man. I was just like, man, I want to roll. That's, like, every day I was like, man, I want to go do this or try this. And, you know, back then, I mean, of course, Abu Dhabi had first started. And I remember a friend of mine, he's probably a mutual friend, man, but this guy, John, I mean, he's on Facebook. But he had gotten me a copy of it, and I was like, man, I went home, threw it in my VCR, right? Some people might not know what that is, but and I'm watching it, and I'm thinking like, oh, man, this is like high level, and just like the transitions, I kept looking at what I was doing, and it was nothing compared to what, you know, it was just like a whole. I mean, of course, they were at that higher level, but I was just like, you know what, man, I want to try this. So I went to the gym that same day, and I'm like, man, and I was catching people. I was just, you know, it was new, nobody knew it, and I remember. I got to roll with Mike, and I purposely gave him my lead leg because I was like, dude, as soon as he shoots in, I'm gonna roll into an armbar, you know. So sure enough, man, I went and I rolled with it, and I was like, and he was like, oh, that's good, not good enough, right? So he got out of it, and I was like, man, but it worked, right? So I was like, so we got to roll, and he was like, man, where'd you get that from? And I was like, oh man, well, buddy of mine gave me a copy of Abu Dhabi, and he's like, bring it tomorrow. Yeah. And I was like, oh man, I didn't want people to know my stuff, man. You know, not mine, but
no, for sure, I agree. You're studying back then, right? That's really what it is, and that's key. You know, before Donny started putting out all of his stuff online, you know, and if back in the day when the DDS was winning the EBIs, like I was reverse engineering what they were doing with their back attacks. Because they didn't have anything online yet, right? Like he wasn't posting anything. But I would spend time reverse engineering on how they were getting finishes from the back. Like I would just reverse engineer, you know, rewind, and watch it and see how they were trapping that straitjacket system, you know. And you know, and now of course with BJJ Fanatics, I think it's revolutionized how we approach teaching, you know. And so you don't necessarily have to do that anymore because it's out there, but. I mean, that's how you get better, you know, study. And you were studying back then, you know.
Oh, yeah. You see, and there's somebody, I think here, as a matter of fact, man, at the HOJ, they were like, oh, yeah, take notes. And I was like, what do you mean you take notes? And he's like, yeah, man, I got a notebook. I'm writing down. And I was like, dude, like, why didn't I ever think of that? Like, I just never, all these years, right? But you got to study and put down what works, what doesn't.
When I teach seminars, I always tell everybody, hey, bring your phones out here and tape. And they're always like, I can do that? And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, why not? And they're like, well, you know, sometimes, you know, people won't let me film. And I'm like, you can literally get on YouTube and see any technique you want to in jiu-jitsu. Yeah. So why wouldn't I let you film? And for me, it's free advertisement. I'm like, man, post that stuff online, you know? So like, you know, like post what I'm teaching online. But so I think it's important to videotape because, I mean, we know how it was back in the day. You go to a seminar and they might teach 10 techniques, and you're lucky if you remember one. You know, because the first one they taught by hour 2, and you're trying to remember the number 10 one, you can't remember the number 1 one. So, you know, that's why I think it's important. I just let people videotape all the techniques so then they can go back and, you know, and review, which is a form of taking notes, basically, you know, and that's what I do. So I have, you know, obviously I have a BJJ Fanatics account, obviously, you know, I feel like Gordon and John Donny are like my personal coaches, you know, and others as well, you know. Ty and Cade Rotolo, you know, their leg pin passing system. When they were first doing it, you know, I fell into it pretty heavy, seeing them have the success they had. But I will literally go home and I will take notes. So like I'll watch the clip and then I'll take notes. I say it like I'm writing it down, but I'm usually using my phone, typing it in my phone, and then I take notes, and then I can go back and review, and I try to have that idea, those notes, so that it's how I remember, because usually after I write it down, I'll remember it, but I watch it, and then I take notes, and that's just how I go about teaching and how I go about implementing new techniques into my own game.
No, for sure, man, because one of the things, like, you talk about writing. I mean, I can't read my own writing, so that probably wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. But I mean, definitely taking notes because yeah, I mean, I've been even to fights. You know, I've been to seminars and I always ask. I would always like show my camera and they're like, oh, yes or no.
Yeah,
one of the two. But like you said, bro, like I would go to seminars and like I would pick up little things. Little techniques more than the move because I'm like, okay, the arm bar, but I'm like, they're like, well, you know, you put your foot here and I'm thinking, oh man, okay, like that's the stuff that I would bring home. But yeah, man, I mean, we couldn't take video back then, you know.
No.
It'd be nice, but you know, it was more like a meet and greet afterwards because you're like, okay, well, I got to.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times we were paying just to be on the mats with whoever it was at the time, you know, like just to be on the mats with them. You weren't necessarily paying for the technique, you're paying to be on the mats and get your picture taken. But for me, I mean, like I want to make sure, like when I go teach a seminar, you're gonna like everybody's gonna have to tell me, okay, I'm done, because like I'll stay until I mean I'll teach for 3 or 4 hours, you know, like I want them to get their money's worth, you know, and I want them to film everything they can, and if they have questions afterwards, ask me, and if I don't know, you know, then I'll get back to them. But you know, I think the way that social media has kind of changed the way that jiu-jitsu's taught. I mean, like I have affiliates, you know, in Arizona and other places, and like students that are in the military that, you know, PCS somewhere, and so we make Facebook pages and they film the technique they're drilling or they film their rolls and then they upload them to Facebook, private Facebook pages, and then I review the technique and, you know, I review their rolls and I give them critiques, and then you know, so now you can have students that are anywhere in the world and you can still help them grow, you know.
No, yeah, definitely, man, because even like, I mean, back then, you know, we had guys like in the gym, you know, with Mike Rangel's, and we would videotape, you know, camcorder. You know,
yeah, for sure.
So we're videotaping, and I mean, going back, and it's like, okay, a lot of it was raw, a lot of it was just like.
We didn't know any better back then either, though.
No, it was just like, I mean, I brought it up earlier, it was like catch wrestling with the gi, you know.
Yeah,
it was like
for
we used
sure.
to do a lot of Russian sambo type stuff and leg locks, and yeah, you know, we go to traditional schools. I got to visit my sister in Florida. During that time, I went out there to go visit, and I went to this school in Sarasota. And as soon as I went in, like we start, you know, I'm kind of like, oh man, it's traditional. Like I was like, okay, cool. Like everybody's doing. Yeah. But which was great, man. I mean, of course, and it's what worked for them. But it's just because I saw that and I got to witness it. It's not something that I would want to keep doing. Like not to disrespect anybody, of course, but it was more like, you know what, I just wanted to learn MMA, I guess. You know, it's like the jiu-jitsu, I get it. Yeah, I want to learn. You know, as far as submission attacks and all that, but it wasn't for me, and that's kind of like where these schools come now. You know, like we mentioned that earlier, because somebody that goes to you and it might not be for them. Yeah. You know, but the fact that you're like, hey, you know what, check out this school. I mean,
absolutely.
I love that, man. That's definitely a lot of respect for that, because you know, it's like, hey, you know, why stop somebody's growth from growing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, jiu-jitsu, life's too short.
Yeah.
Like don't, like if you don't enjoy me as an instructor, like San Antonio is a jiu-jitsu mecca. Go down the road a couple blocks and find a different gym that you do enjoy training at. You know, like life's too short to not go somewhere and train. You know, and also like realistically, you're all paying customers. You're paying somebody for a product. So go where you're happy. You know, loyalty's important for sure. Don't get me wrong. Like, loyalty's super important, and you know, but at the same time, like, make sure you're happy. You know, and if as long as you can say that, then great. But if you can't, then go somewhere where you're happy. You know. No, you see, one of the things, and I'm gonna bring him up because I went to go interview a fighter, Maha Senki. You know, we were out there, Brook Hollow, and I remember there was another gym down the road, literally, or down the center maybe, man. And I had told him, I said, hey, does it bother you that, you know, such another BJJ school? And he said, no. He said, man, if it were up to me, I would have jiu-jitsu everywhere. This whole thing would be jiu-jitsu. He said, because there would only be one Maha Senki jiu-jitsu. And I was just like, man, I got chills now, because I was just like, you know what? I respected him for it, man, because it just showed how confident he was and how much he was teaching, you know. I call Ma the godfather of BJJ in San Antonio. Oh, definitely, bro. Bar none. Yeah. You know, and like, there's no doubt, you know. There's a picture I have of him wrapping my blue belt around my waist, and I don't know what it's been so long ago, I don't know what I was thinking, but I look super mad. Like, I don't look happy. I'm not sure what I was thinking, but he was wrapped around my waist, and I'm sure he was telling me something in my ear, but you know, I mean, he's the godfather of BJJ. Pretty much everybody, you look at all of us that, I mean, a lot of us old school black belts that are here in town, we all kind of started training there, you know, back in the day.
For sure, because even like you said, like Tapmock, I mean, all these guys, I mean, Rudy Hernandez, I know they started doing their own thing. Yeah,
Rudy, James Walker, Paul Helm, a bunch, I mean, there's so many of us, you know, Bill Waller, you know,
you see, and a lot of those guys are black belts now too.
All of us, right? All of us are black belts, you know. And so it's just there's so many guys that have trained there, you know. So I think he's the godfather of BJJ in San Antonio. You know, that's what I call him.
I mean, honestly, I think he was the first black belt.
Yeah, so when I think he was, for sure he was. He came and he promoted, Bruno was a brown belt. He gave Bruno his black belt at this first seminar he taught here, and then he stayed. And then soon after that, Rodrigo came and was teaching there. So yeah, I mean, realistically, I think he was the godfather of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in San Antonio. You have to respect what he's done. You know, every time I see that dude, it's like we never we give each other a hug. You know, he's super. He's just a good man.
Yeah,
you know?
No, definitely, man. It's kind of like I was saying earlier. It's like a text message. It never ends.
Yeah,
you just keep up the conversation, and you're like, hey, man, it's been a while, but. You know, the respect and the you know, the friendship, man. Because obviously, I mean, all these gyms you've trained at and people are trained with, and just, I mean, how can you not, you know?
Yeah, I mean, my closest friends are all black belts, you know. So that we all started training there, you know, and now we're all over. You know, some of us are still under Rodrigo, some of us are under Maha, some of us aren't, but you know, we're all still close.
No, yeah, you see, and that's what I was talking about earlier, because I mean, things happen. I mean, people move. Maybe it's just a simple move, but it's just like you get to spread that, and now they planted the seed here, and now you planted somewhere else, and it's like, man, let it keep growing.
When you train jiu-jitsu as much as we all love jiu-jitsu, you know, and and when you train jiu-jitsu as much as we do, most of the time we spend more time at the gym than we do with our families, and so. We all know how we fight with our family. Oh, yeah. There's fights with family, right? So that happens in jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And, you know, when I had my falling out with Daniel, and because of that with Rodrigo, there was a point in time where we didn't talk. And then I'll remember seeing Rodrigo, and we came up and we talked at a tournament. And he put his hand, I'm about ready to cry right now. He put his hand on me and he asked me how my family was, and I started crying. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I gave him a hug, and I told him I loved him, and he said I love you too, you know. And then like we talked for 30 minutes or something, and then the next day he called me and was like, hey, how you doing? You know, talking, and that's what jiu-jitsu is all about. Yeah. You know, like that's what it is. You know, it's like understanding that, like. You know, we don't hold grudges, you know.
No, man, you can't, bro, because, you know, it's just, I mean, nobody wants to see people leave, man. I mean, even because you don't just leave the gym. I mean, you leave friends.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it hurts.
Absolutely. And I cross-train, JR and I were going over and cross-training with Heba and HR in Lavernia and out in on the west side as well with Heba at Heba's gym. And so yeah, I mean, I think it's super important, and like man, life's too short, you know.
No, yeah,
like,
bro,
just
believe me,
just train, you know, and understand that it's that jiu-jitsu brotherhood, you know, that we all have. Yeah. You know, and man, I love Rodrigo, you know, like I'm kind of tearing up.
Bro, I have not seen that guy in a while, bro. But yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys. Like I would definitely, I'd be happy to see him. You know, these guys.
You look at the level of jiu-jitsu coming out of that gym is insane,
bro. Yeah, like
it's crazy. You know, that world-class athletes for sure. You know, gi and no gi both. Oh yeah, which is hard to do.
Yeah, you see, and I mean, I'm a fan of everybody, bro, and it's just, I mean, for me, it's one of those, like, even, I mean, when it's jiu-jitsu, I'm like, okay, you know, you got to roll with somebody that you know, or I know both people. When it comes to MMA, when I see people that I know fighting, I'm kind of like, man, you know, I got to cover that, man.
Yeah.
But it's business, you know, and I'm like,
Yeah.
well, you know, this is what they're doing. They know what they signed up for, but it's, you know, the fact that afterwards they're like, they shake hands and they're like, hey, man, and maybe even end up cross-training together.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's important. You need to cross-train. I tell my students all the time, cross-training is as close as you can get to competition without actually competing. So go cross-train, you know, test your jiu-jitsu, and when you learn something, bring it back to the gym and teach us, you know?
Exactly.
Like I've only ever experienced one time I was TDY in Spokane, Washington with a friend of mine, Chris Easter, who's a BTT black belt, one of my mentors. He's back in San Antonio now as well. He's retired. And we were TDY somewhere in Spokane, Washington, and we were looking for a place to train. And we called this gym, and we both explained that we're black belts. We were on speaker. We're like, hey, we're black belts in town. We want to train. Can we come cross-train? And the black belt, she put us on the phone with the black belt, and the black belt instructor said, I prefer you didn't. And that's the only time in my life that somebody has ever said that. You know, most of the time most of us that train jiu-jitsu, we just want to train.
Yeah.
You know, like, it would just caught me off guard, but that's the only time I've ever experienced that. But, you know, cross-training is super important. Go cross-train, you know, win or lose, come back, you know, test your jiu-jitsu and bring back what you learned that worked and didn't work. And teach, you know, super important. People ask me all the time, hey, Blue, I'm going to be in wherever. Can I train? I'm like, don't ask me if you can train. Like, I don't. Like, go train. Like, you don't need my permission to train somewhere. Yeah. You know, like, you don't, like, can I go to this gym? Yeah, go. You don't need my permission. I'm not your dad. Like, I'm your coach, you know? Like, you know, like, go train.
But you see, and that just goes to show, because, I mean, even when I was with Mike, like, when I started with him, like, probably more out of fear, but more out of respect, you know, I would ask him, like, hey, Mike, way to hit up this gym, and he's like, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. You know, and he was open with it. He was just like, it's your money. I'm like, true, right? So I would go, and like I said, he was cool with it. It's just the other gyms weren't. So every time I pop up somewhere,
I mean, that happens, I think, but you got to deal with it, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's just, you know, I knew what I wanted to get out of it, so it didn't work. But I mean, I didn't stop training though. So that's one of the things. I mean, when I actually started cross training or actually traveling outside the city, that's when I was like, oh, okay, wow, you know, there's other people, you know, because I mean, I knew there was gyms here in town, but it was just, I mean, going to Corpus, going to, you know, Houston, Austin. I mean, I just got to roll with a lot of good people, and it's just, it definitely changed my mindset, because I was like, man, okay, you know what, I don't see this at the gym. So
I mean, that's important, because you roll with the same people every day. It's what I tell, you know, white belts that come in that are training, they're just getting annihilated, and they're like, you know, they internalize that shit, and they don't talk. They won't talk to me or talk to their teammates, and then they're thinking about quitting, you know, and they're like, man, I'm just not getting any better. And then typically, if I try to build this culture of like not being afraid to talk to me, right? Because every white belt goes through that. Everybody has that.
Oh yeah.
And so, and even as a black belt and brown belt and purple belt, we all have that. Man, we don't feel like we're improving. But white belts especially, you know, they experience it. And so I'm like, man, wait till that new person signs up. Wait till that new person signs up. You're going to see or go cross-train somewhere, you know, and see that you know jiu-jitsu. It's just that everybody's progressing in the gym at the same pace you are, so you don't feel like you're improving, but I promise you are, you know. And, you know, it's always, there's never a time where that's not true, you know. It's just sometimes we feel like we're not progressing.
No, you see, and I will say this, man, because there was a small stint where I was teaching here in town, inside the Carl's Mall, right? And everybody's like, I was already doing like garage days, you know. After, you know, I stopped training with Mike for a year. You know, it's just work changed. I mean, I moved. I mean, here in the city, but it was just timing wasn't there. And for me, when I started teaching, it was more because the only times I had was mornings. Yeah. And nobody else before nobody was teaching morning jiu-jitsu, bro. Everything was evening because people worked during the day. And so I was like, you know what? Well, I'm going to start training at this gym. Talked to Chip Thornsberg, who actually started Tama. And he was like, man, why don't you just teach here? And I was like, man, I didn't really want to teach, but I was like, you know what? I'll come work out, and if people come in, then no problem. And so that's kind of where that started. And of course, I got affiliated through somebody, and was representing the Carson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu team, before Master Carson Gracie Sr. passed away, unfortunately. But for me, when I was there, it was, I had this thing where, I was getting a lot of people, and it just turned out a lot more people were working nights. So I was like, cool, man. People were coming in, and I think at one point I had like 36 students in the morning. That was big for me.
That's huge.
Like, man, but I had guys from Lockhart coming down, guys from Corpus. So we're like, hey, man, we're just a traditional school, but we want to learn BJJ. And I was like, yeah, dude, come train. But what I liked about it was that I had this drill with everybody, where I would line everybody up, and everybody would put a rear naked choke. Everybody would tap. So I keep going, rotate. I would tap. And I said, okay, you know what? Everybody tapped everybody, so get out, get out the door, and let's just train. And everybody's like, oh, okay, cool, man, because people were afraid to tap, so nobody would move. And it was just like, dude, don't worry about that. Like, it's gonna happen. Yeah,
for sure, absolutely. I see it more at the kids ranks than I do with adults, but I see it with adults too. I'll stop the kids and I'll stop them and be like, hey, let go of your hands and actually do jiu-jitsu. I don't care if you tap 1,000 times this round. I can fix that. What I can't fix is you just laying here on your back and not moving, right? And once you get that out of the way, then your jiu-jitsu will start to exponentially grow.
No, definitely, man, because it's just like with fighting. I always tell people, man, try things here.
For sure.
You go out there, because...
And that's absolutely, get 1% better in the gym every day. Don't play your A game in the gym. So try to work on what you're being taught in the gym that week. Every role shouldn't be about winning, right? Every role should be about improving. And then, maybe once or twice a week, then you're like, okay, I'm playing my A game. Maybe once a week, whatever. Or once every 2 weeks, you're like, I'm going to play my A game. But if you want to improve fast, it's not about winning every round. It's about getting better every round. And once you understand that, your growth will improve faster.
And it shows, man, because it's like if you put yourself out there, you're not afraid to roll with new people, man. It's only going to make you better, because, it's like nobody rolls the same. Nobody...
Absolutely.
Where somebody might be good at in guard, the other guy might be a better, who knows?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. If you come to my gym and you roll with me, pretty much everybody knows I'm going to try and strangle you, with a Darce or some type of, but you go with somebody else, they're a guard player. I think you see all the different types of jiu-jitsu, whereas sometimes you just training with your students or your teammates, and you're not trying to improve, you do get stagnant. That's the hardest thing for growth in jiu-jitsu, though, is because we can roll at nearly 100% every night. Where you get stagnant is you're trying to play your A game every night. You're trying to win every round. You're looking at your training partners as competition.
Yeah.
So you're like, and so then you don't improve as fast. When you look at them as training partners and you're practicing what you're being taught that week, you improve faster.
No, for sure, man. Because I know, like I said earlier, man, when I first started, the first thing I started learning to do was tap. That was just like, okay, I didn't feel I was getting any better. But yeah, after a while, like a few months, I was like, damn, the people who were tapping me out, I was like holding my own and making them work. So I said, okay, well, obviously I'm doing something.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's fun. For those that haven't tried it, let me ask you this, bro. For those that are looking to get into martial arts, say to go train with you, what can they look forward to?
Well, the biggest step to training, not with me, but in training any martial art in general, is getting over the fear of just stepping on the floor. We all have this thing. Well, let me get in shape first, and then I'll come.
That's
right?
Me.
Right? Yeah. Let me get in shape first, and then I'll come. Or I've got this injury I'm worried about. Or so all kinds of excuses. So just getting over that initial fear of coming, and then having open and honest feedback with whoever your instructor is. Is like, hey, this is what I'm looking to get out of training. Whether it's jiu-jitsu, I keep saying jiu-jitsu because that's what I teach, but any traditional martial art, this is what I'm looking to get out of training. Right. This right here, and whatever that open and honest feedback is, great. And then your instructor should have that back with you. And if they can't work around your injuries, or work around your size, whatever it might be, then they're probably not the right instructor for you, right? So a prime example, I have a student, I talked about him earlier. I gave him his blue belt in 9 months. When he first came to the gym, he legit could not roll for 15 seconds. 100%, he couldn't roll for 15 seconds. He would be smoked, right? and I've never, my fastest blue belt before him was 12 months. So I give him his blue belt in 9 months, and he's a monster, and it's because he has no ego, you know, and now he can roll for an hour straight, hard rounds, and he literally 9 months ago he couldn't roll for 15 seconds. You know, 15 seconds he would be, I need a break, you know, and I'm like, just push through, we got this, you know, and I would roll with him and just like give him a little bit of resistance, just you're able to talk, you're okay, you're breathing, you know, and I think you just got to have instructors that are willing to work with you, you know, and then don't be afraid to get on the mats, you know, we all have excuses to not train, all of us, including me, you know, and so it's like making excuses to train, you know, like, yeah, I've got this going on, but can I give 30 minutes on the mat today, you know, and if you can do that, then 30 minutes eventually turns into an hour or turns into 30 minutes twice a week or whatever, you know. And the other thing is just because you want to be a hobbyist, that's great. Yeah. You know, your instructor should be able to understand that and be like, yeah, everybody in this room trains hard, but they know not to train hard with you. Right. You know, and I preach training hard. I preach hard rolls. That's my gym. That's the culture. Is like we're trying to murder each other, but we have people that we know. Okay, that's not what we're trying to do with them. No, yeah, you know, because not everybody's like that. Yeah. But you know, like with my kids program, my little kids, they have this thing, right? So like at the end of class, I'll ask them, and they all regurgitate it to me. They're like little soldiers, right? So I'll be like, I'll have them all lined up, and I'll be like, how do you get better at jiu-jitsu? And they'll scream out, train somewhere every day, you know, loud. Nice. And then I'm like, I'll say, if you have a choice between drilling and rolling, what should you pick? And they'll yell, drilling. Right? And then I'll be like, does practice make perfect? No. What makes perfect? And they'll yell, perfect practice. And then I'll yell, nice. And then I'll say, are we ever going to reach perfection? And they'll yell back, no, sir. And I'll say, but in the pursuit of perfection, what can we catch? And they'll yell, excellence, right? And I was like, and the last and most important thing, every time you slap and bump in class, what needs to be on your mind? And they'll yell, murder! And, you know, that's, they understand that, right? And so I'll get on them when somebody's drilling wrong or they're not paying attention, and I curse at my kids. So if you bring your kids to me, they're going to get cursed at. So I'm like, hey, what was that? And they'll look, and I'll be, that was a shit show. You know better than that. What makes perfect? And they're like, perfect practice. I was like, so you can regurgitate what I want to hear, but you're not living it. But you're not living it. Like, I don't care if you can regurgitate the information to me. I want you to live the lifestyle. Perfect practice makes perfect, right? And they're like, yes, sir. And then they'll go back to drilling, you know? And I think that's key, you know? I don't have that same, like, quotes with my adults. I mean, I do tell those things to them, but the kids enjoy that little spiel that we do at the end of class, you know, but the adults get that as well, you know, so I think it's key, man, you know. No, definitely, man. I mean, especially, you know, getting the kids at a young age. I mean, like, you know, your student, I mean, you say he's still a young man, and he's already I think right? I don't hide technique from, so some people teach kids techniques and they teach adults techniques. Everybody at my gym gets the same technique. Yeah. I have 7-year-old girls that are going to heel hook you, right? Absolutely. And people are like, oh my God, you're teaching 7-year-old kids how to heel hook. Yeah, I am. Absolutely, because we teach it safe and methodical, right. You know? Like, I have way more injuries in the gym, knock on wood, over the years with kimuras, right, than I ever have with leg locks, ever. You know, and people are just scared of the myth of a heel hook and reaping. But, like, way more injuries with kimuras than I've ever had with any other submission, you know? So, like, you know, my kids are learning leg locks. Not right away. You know, they have to have basic jiu-jitsu, but kids are learning leg locks at 7 and 8 years old. Why? I don't differentiate between, okay, this is a kid's technique and this is an adult technique. You know, I don't do that. No, you see, and of course that's what's going to help with their growth, man. Absolutely, for sure. You know, they all understand that and they get it. And you know, I think the other thing is being able to tell your kid, you're like, I have a little girl, her name's Macy Pittman. She's 7 and she just got her gray white belt, and she's a monster, right? And she's like, we were having this conversation the other day after class, and I asked her a question. And I was like, why did you do that, Macy? And she's like, because I'm just built different, Professor. And I was like, absolutely,
nice.
right?
I remember that one.
Yeah, because I'm just built different. And she gets it, you know, she understands, you know. So, but you know, the culture at my gym with the kids and with the adults is we're trying to. There's no easy roles, you know. We're trying, you know. Another thing I'll ask my kids is if there's a lion in the room, what do you do? And they'll all chant back, find the biggest lion and roll with them, you know. Don't run from him, you know. And that's just the culture thing that I try to breed into my gym.
No, for sure, man. And man, I know I've been keeping you here. It's almost been an hour, bro.
Yeah, for sure.
But what I want to do is, I mean, whenever you have time, definitely invite you back. Come back here. We'll talk whether it's weather, traffic. You know, it don't matter, man. But definitely bring you back and get more going. But Donny Blue, one last question, bro. I mean, obviously your students know you used to compete in MMA back in the day. Do they know your nickname?
The Scarecrow.
Yeah, bro.
The Scarecrow. Yeah, for sure. And some of my new students will hit me up and be like, hey, Professor, we found the Scarecrow video. I'm like, yeah, that's old school for sure.
And I always ask, because I think it was Aaron when he was here, and I had brought that up, and he's like, oh, that's right, man, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, where did that come from?
So funny. So, from me getting my ass kicked in the gym. So if you watch The Wizard of Oz, the Scarecrow would always fall down and get knocked down, get up, be like, I'm okay. That was me, man. I'd take a beating. It was it was either going to be Timex, right, Rolex, or Scarecrow, because like that was just kind of everybody had nicknames, and then it kind of just stuck with Scarecrow because I would just I'd take a head kick and get cut, and I'd be bleeding, and I wouldn't want to quit. You know, I'd just be like, I'm okay. Let's go. Let's keep going. And that was just kind of how it came to be, and then it just stuck. You know, you don't get to pick your nickname.
No, not at all, man. Sometimes it's given to us, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
I definitely earned it with Aaron too, because he beat the shit out of me in the second round of that fight. He and if you watch the video, I'm smiling as he's punching me in the face, because my whole thing was like, man, he's gonna get tired, and that was just my nickname, man. I got it.
But man, I mean, I appreciate you coming by, bro. Like I said earlier, I'd love to bring you back.
Absolutely. Anytime.
And I mean, there's more stories, man. I know, because I still got a lot more questions, man. But I wanted to make this a great conversation, so I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And
thanks
of
for having
course,
me.
not a problem, bro. But I'm gonna plug in your gym and the YouTube video once it's loaded. And I want to thank you, man.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
And everybody out there, of course, this is sPidA, the Fight Card Podcast. Till next time, follow up. And we should be good. But man, I do thank you, bro. I know it's been a minute.
While.
Oh yeah. And man, I mean, there's so